إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. This is our 7th class on Al-Usul al-Thalatha. And we talked about the first introductory 4 fundamental principles. These are the introductory principles. The first one was knowledge, and he defined knowledge as knowing Allah, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the religion of Islam. The second one was to apply your knowledge, which we finished off last week. The third one today is calling people onto it. Calling people onto it. And that brings us to our first point today. Calling people onto what? What does the dhamir go back to? What does the dhamir refer to? What does the pronoun, what does it refer to? It. Calling people onto it. Calling people onto it usually refers to the last matter. What the last matter is da'wah, applying it. Calling people to applying it. We already explained though that applying knowledge doesn't come without you knowing knowledge. So in reality, calling people onto it means calling people onto knowledge and its application, because they come side by side. They're inseparable. That's the first point. Next point is an important issue many discuss. Is da'wah fard ayn or fard kifaya? Is it communal obligation or personal obligation? And the answer to that is a twofold answer. Da'wah is ordaining the good and forbidding the evil. That's da'wah. Ordaining the good and forbidding evil is da'wah. There needs to be, the first fold of the answer is, there needs to be a group of people devoted to ordaining the good and forbidding the evil. They gotta be devoted for that task. That part here is fard kifaya, communal obligation. If a group does it, it's sufficient for the ummah. Every individual of the ummah doesn't have to be a khatib. We don't need 1.6 billion khatibs. Or master the elucidation of all the hadith of Bukhari. Or break down the narrations of the chain of narrations of the hadith. A group of this ummah have to go get the classical, detailed, in-depth knowledge in hadith, in mustalah, in seerah, in tafsir, in fara'id, in inheritance, the laws of inheritance. That in itself, all that is fard kifaya. Allah in the Quran says, وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً. It's not proper for all the believers to go out in jihad. وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ. A party should stay behind and get the instructions, get the lessons on Islamic knowledge, so that they can warn their people when they return to them. A group of this ummah has to be in the forefront of da'wah. They have to take on the challenges. When people bring misconceptions, they got to respond to them. When government spread kufr, someone's got to stand up to it. Someone needs to respond to all that. Someone needs to respond to the rawafid, to the khawarij, to the murjia. Someone needs to lead jum'ah. Someone needs to lead salah. Someone has to have the detailed knowledge of jarh and ta'dil. Someone has to have the detailed knowledge of inheritance. But that's not something everyone is able to do. It's not something everyone is able to do. And in fact, it's impossible to burden the whole ummah with such detailed knowledge. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah said, there needs to be a group of this ummah in the forefront to confront the wrong, stop the evil, and represent and convey the truth. Then he said, which leads us to the answer, the second answer, the B answer. At the same time, it is also wajib on every individual to the extent he can do. It's wajib on every individual to the extent he can do. That's the second answer. Every Muslim has a personal obligation, a fard ayn obligation, individual responsibility to perform da'wah. Each according to the best of his abilities or her abilities and according to their surroundings. And that varies, that slightly varies based on every individual, based on their knowledge. You have to do da'wah in what you know, in your surroundings, around you. You don't have to be a khatib, but you do know salah is fard. You see someone who's not doing their salah, you say salah is obligatory on us. You have to perform your salah. You know backbiting is haram. You're in a setting where there's backbiting. You say, stop, this is haram. The Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Bukhari, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, convey from me even if one ayah. If you know one ayah, go ahead and convey it. You know that truly, you truly know the meaning of that ayah, convey it. In the Quran, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there arise a group out of you, inviting people to that which is good, to Islam, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. A group of you. Min, minkum, min, in Arabic, means tab'id, meaning, which would mean a group of you. Let there be a group of you. Min, tab'id, meaning some of you. Which, if you take it to that, if you take min lit tab'id, would mean the fard kifaya, the communal obligation. Meaning, let there a group of you master the knowledges. But min in Arabic could mean al-jins, which means, the verse would mean, let there be of mankind, meaning all of you. Min lil-jins, meaning mankind, which would make the verse meaning the fard ayn type of da'wah, the individual obligation type of da'wah, because min could be also lil-jins, meaning of mankind. Abu Hurairah in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever sees the hadith, all of you know, whoever sees, it's in Sahih Muslim, whoever sees evil, let him change it by his hand, if not by his tongue, if not by his heart. Every Muslim is directed to change based on, and of course every single one of these, the tongue, the hand, and the heart, has its own rules and regulations. Matters one is trusted with, like his own children, he's obligated to do da'wah with them. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. O you who believe, guard yourselves and your family. How could you guard them without giving them da'wah? A person must do da'wah to his family because he's entrusted with them, and he will be asked about it. A woman is to do da'wah with her family as well, in her surroundings, in her relatives, in her friends, in her peers, because she may be asked about it. She may be asked about certain situation where she's in if she doesn't do the da'wah. If one is in a gathering where there's wine being served, he must or she must tell him this is prohibited, and the least of it, forbidding the evil, is walking away. Walking away from that is in itself forbidding the evil. And it's better if you tell them. So the point is, the detailed form of da'wah, where you know the detailed Islamic knowledge and you convey that, and you talk about the Khawarij, the Murji'ah, the Rawafid, the Jarh and Ta'deel, that's fard kifaya. But there's an obligation on everyone within his surroundings to the best of his abilities and means. That one's not fard kifaya, that's a fard ayn. The next point. We emphasize knowledge so much in our classes. Alhamdulillah, from what I gather from the questions that we've been getting, is that many who follow these classes on a regular basis are heavily involved in da'wah. And that's a good sign. And that's our target. That's the kind of group we target. A common question I've been getting is that, should I cancel my da'wah efforts? You emphasize knowledge so much. Should I cancel my da'wah efforts and focus on learning? And I'm going to let Imam Ahmad answer that question for you, rahimahullah. In Manaqib al-Imam Ahmad for Ibn al-Jawzi, Salih, the son of Imam Ahmad, said, a man saw my father with an ink pot. They used to carry the ink pot. And it was in my father's hand. Salih is talking about his father. The man said, Abu Abdullah. Abu Abdullah is the name of Imam Ahmad. You've reached such a high status and position. You're the Imam of the Muslimin. You're Imam of Ahl Sunnah. Until when are you going to continue carrying the ink pot? And Imam Ahmad said, I'm going to take the ink pot to the grave. مع المحبرة إلى المقبرة. مع المحبرة إلى المقبرة. Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Sayyigh. Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Sayyigh. Al-Sayyigh means the one who was forger. He had a shop that he was a forger in. He said, me and my father were working. Imam Ahmad came by carrying his shoes. and passed by our shop. My father grabbed him by his thawb, by his dress. He said, aren't you embarrassed, Imam Ahmad? Until when are you going to keep learning from these young kids? You keep learning. Those kids you go and learn, they're either one or two things. They're either younger than Imam Ahmad, or they did not have the knowledge Imam Ahmad had. But he still went to learn from them. Imam Ahmad told As-Sayyigh, he told him, until death. I'm going to keep going to learn until death. When death comes, then I'll stop learning. In Jami' Bayan al-Ilm wa Fadlih, Ibn Abd al-Bar, Ibn al-Mubarak was asked, until when are you going to continue learning? Because he always pursued learning and studying. He said, until death. Another time, when he was asked the same question, he said, it may be, pay attention to that, it may be that which I need to learn, that which I desperately need to know, when I stand before Allah, I possibly haven't wrote it yet. If you say you want to delay da'wah until you fully encompass knowledge, then we all are never going to do da'wah. Not in this lifetime for sure. Everyone needs to do da'wah in what he knows, in what he's sure of. There may be another matter pertaining to this, which is more personal. Which is balancing between your da'wah time and your learning time. That is not to say you take out da'wah out of your life. You balance it in a way that you see or deem that fits you. Ali Tantawi, a contemporary scholar or a da'iyah, whatever you want to call him, I heard him say that for the past 70 years of his life, since he started learning to read, not a day passed by he read less than 100 pages, unless he was traveling. And when he was sick, it would be about 200 pages. And in his youth, it was 300 pages. He said, I used to read and study for 10 hours a day. He was slightly humorous. He said, if someone studies for 10 hours a day and he's a donkey, something's going to stick in his mind. So look at that. 100 to 300 pages a day of his life, 10 hours a day. Yes, we all have to study like that. We all have to study, and learning is a never-ending process. Allah told His Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. This is to the Prophet ﷺ. Oh Allah, give me more knowledge. Give me more knowledge. Until when? Until when give me more knowledge? Give me more knowledge? What's the expiration date on this dua? When do you stop saying that, O Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Never. قُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, until his death. That's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So imagine us. We continue to learn. Just because you're learning, it doesn't mean you neglect your da'wah. The point of this, if one thinks he can go to Medina or some school or university or study with a sheikh and study and then complete all the knowledge and then sit to teach, that's not a alim. That might be the shuyukh of today, but the real shuyukh studied all the way until death. And they actually, after they left universities, studied more than they did when they were in the universities. If you keep studying until death, you want to delay da'wah until you graduate from learning, then there's no such thing as da'wah, because you're never going to graduate. There's no graduating out of Islamic knowledge. Study, and at the same time you study, convey what you know. But balance it out in a way that suits you. If you don't know knowledge, share the basics. Everyone knows La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Take someone who's a not Muslim, teach him La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, or an aspect of it, or an aspect of manners. If you can't do da'wah on your own tongue, do it on the tongue of your others. How? By giving out a book. By a lecture you hear or see, you give it out in an audio format or in a link format. That's doing da'wah on the tongue of others, but you get the same reward. The entire ummah must be dua, but not dua of mimbar. They don't necessarily have to be dua on the mimbar. Everyone in his vicinity should be a da'iyah, in according to that which he knows and what suits him in his surrounding. Everyone has to think about devoting a time frame out of his life for da'wah. Da'wah is not a monopolized mission the so-called shuyukh only take for themselves or take upon themselves. Had it not been for the youth during the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, the youth, there would have been no Islam today. We're all, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave example, we're all on a ship, ordaining for good and forbidding the evils like people on a ship. If you let someone destroy that ship, the whole ship sinks. If we let it and stop anyone who's trying to destroy the ship, preserve it, then we're all going to reach the shore safely. The next point, we encourage learning. We encouraged it so much that people began to ask us, should we stop da'wah and just learn? We just answered that. We said, no, you give da'wah while you learn. At the same time, but balance it in a way that suits your personal life. The next point is, related to this, is that you do give da'wah, we said, we encourage you, but know your limits. Today, there's a worldwide Islamic epidemic. One who might be a good talker, or possibly even just grow a couple-day-old beard, maybe put on a scarf, maybe even not even a scarf, just put on a kufiya, and go to a local masjid or give a talk or two and just upload it on YouTube. What happens? The man who has sacrificed his whole life in medical school, who knows snippets of Islamic knowledge, or possibly one or two bits and pieces of Islamic knowledge, the one who spent and sacrificed his life in law school and engineering school, or maybe a businessman, suddenly, he's a sheikh, he's a mufti, he's sheikh so-and-so. He begins to speak so boldly in matters of the destiny of this ummah, the Sahaba and the four Imams would have backed away from. Sometimes it starts off innocently. That's the truth of the matter. He teaches, he knows some good hadith, good lecture, good khutbah he gives, and he conveys it, and it starts off good. Or he goes to a non-Muslim community, he conveys a lecture, invites them to Islam. That's good. But some don't know where to stop. Suddenly, after he speaks in the local community and begins to wear his kufiya out a lot, and then a few-day-old beard, or possibly sometimes you go to Hajj and come back, and he's a sheikh and a mufti from going back to Hajj, or go to Medina for Umrah and come back, or he went back to Medina. What's his knowledge? What's his sheikh? Oh, he went to Medina. How long did he stay in Medina? 3 weeks. What did he get in 3 weeks? The problem is people don't know their limits. Now, in this day and age, you don't ask, where's the sheikh? You ask who's not the sheikh. You just present a question, Islamic question in any field, in any surrounding, and just see the people. And see who will say, well, Allahu A'lam. Let's consult the sheikh, see how rare that is. Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla said, I met 20 of the Ansar. 120 of the Ansar, the Prophet ﷺ Sahaba. Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla is a tabi'i. He said, if you ask each of them an issue, they would defer it to the other person, and the other person, and until it comes back to the first person. It goes from 120 people all the way back to the first person. Not a single of them preaches a hadith except that he wishes his brother would suffice him. Not a single one of them would give a fatwa except that he wishes his brother would suffice him. Can you imagine asking 120 Muslims today about an Islamic matter? Oh, wallahi, I think this and this. And I think this and ask him, my watch broke or my computer broke. He's going to say, oh, take it to the computer office or this place, they know good. But Islam, everyone's a sheikh today. Umar used to say, fear Allah and giving your opinions over matters of this deen. Umar and Ali, among others, when an issue used to arise, they are the best of the best in the best century. You would think Umar and Ali would jump up and answer the question. But when a question or issue would arise, they would gather the Sahaba, get together. What's the answer to this question? Maybe one of them heard a hadith the other one didn't know of. You think Umar and Ali, when they did that, they didn't know? Honestly, do you think they did not know when they would gather the Sahaba and ask them? No, but they wanted to make 1,000% sure that this is the right answer, that they didn't miss out on anything. Ata ibn Sa'ib said, a tabi'i, I met men, he means about the Sahaba. He's a tabi'i talking about the Sahaba. I met men, when one is asked about a fatwa, his answer would be while his knees were trembling and shuddering. His knees would, why? He fears Allah that he's going to be asked about this question. Al-Sha'bi, Al-Hasan al-Basri, and Abu Hussein, all tabi'een, the second generation after the Sahaba. They said, some of you today give fatwas in matters that if they were presented to Umar ibn al-Khattab, he would have gathered the people of Badr to consult with them. إن أحدكم لا يفتي في المسألة لو وردت على عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه لجمع لها أهل بدر. What do we say today, Sha'bi? What do we say about today, Al-Hasan al-Basri? What do we say today about the Ummah? If that's during your time, the first century. People who can't, wallahi, people who cannot pronounce a single verse from the Quran have today become, whether they call themselves or other calls them or not, indirectly, have become muftin. People so ignorant, they use matters abrogated in Islam as proof to substantiate their stance. Wallahi, we heard those who can't pronounce a single verse from the Quran clearly issue fatwas or use some kind of proof on matters that are abrogated. Abrogated to, for example, as proof for free mixing and mingling. Imam Malik said, whoever wants to answer a fatwa or issue pertaining to Islamic matters, let him contemplate as what's best for him before Allah. What's going to suffice him when he's before Allah. Let him remember heaven and let him remember hell. And after he contemplates and think that, let him answer. من أحب أن يجيب على مسألة فليعرض نفسه قبل أن يجيب على الجنة والنار وكيف يكون خلاصه في الآخرة ثم يجيب. A man asked Imam Malik and he didn't answer. The man said, Abu Abdullah, please answer me. Imam, answer me. Imam Malik replied, do you want me to be a justification to the action that you want to do? Do you want me to be the justification for the action before Allah? And then I'm the one to get punished and you go scot-free? Al-Haytham ibn Jamil, he said, Imam Malik was once asked about 48 matters. He answered 32. And he said to the rest of them, I don't know. He answered 32. And the rest of them, he said, I don't know. Roam around the world and ask the same number of questions Imam Malik was asked about and see how many answers. You're going to get, if you ask 50, you're going to get 50 out of 50. You ask 10, you're going to get 10 out of 10. It's a miserable situation of the ummah. One man told Imam Malik, Abu Abdullah, if you say I don't know, who knows? Imam Malik, you're the mufti of your time. Imam Malik said, you don't know me more than I know myself. I know myself. He's saying, do I look special to you? I'm an ordinary person and I know my limits. If Imam Malik knows his limits, shouldn't people of today know their limits? He said, if Ibn Umar said he didn't know, then I can say I don't know. Being conceited, and this is Imam Malik's word, and love of prestige and leadership is what destroys people. That's why they can't say I don't know. Here I have a comment to say about this. When like Umar ibn al-Khattab, when Uthman, when Imam Malik, when they would gather the Sahaba to consult with them, when Imam Malik would say, and remember Ibn al-Jawzi, we talked about him in the last halaqah, he would back away from matters. The kids would probably ask, Imam Malik says, I don't know, to people who are traveling from weeks journey just to ask him, and he says, I don't know, to several questions of theirs. Do you think the Sahaba or Imam Malik didn't really know? I always think about this issue. Al-Shafi'i, they told him he was legible to give fatwa when he was 15 years old. His shuyukh told him, you are legible to give fatwa when he was 15 years old. His teacher, Ibn Uyayna, used to teach and asked the Shafi'i, who was still a kid, what do you think about this matter? What do you think about this hadith? And he would refer people to ask a Shafi'i, his own teacher. Malik took the task of giving fatwa at the age of 21. After he went around to his shuyukh, he said, am I suitable now to give a fatwa or not? They told him, Imam Malik, if your shuyukh would have told you no, would you have stopped? He said, certainly. Certainly I would have. You remember that last class I mentioned two of the most prominent shuyukh of Ibn al-Jawzi who would back away from giving fatwa that the kids in his halaqah would give? Something I always thought of is, do you think they really didn't know? You think these people didn't really know? I'm almost positive, we don't know the ghaib, but I'm nearly positive they did know the answer. What I believe is that there was opinions or many hadith in the matter. They were not at a level where they were 100% sure. They were probably 99.9% sure. Okay, this is the right answer, but we're not 100% sure, so they back away. That's my feeling, and that's what I know of these imams. If your boss gives you a discretion to sign off on certain matters, you would think a million times before you proceed, and you would ask around, you think this is the right decision? I want to make my boss happy. He gave me a discretion to do this and that. Do you think I made the right decision? If one was an advisor to a king, to a president, and the king and president give him discretion to do certain things or to make certain decisions, he would ask around all over and make sure that's the correct 100% decisions. One who's going to give a fatwa is given a fatwa, matter pertaining not to a king or a president or a boss. It's a matter pertaining to Allah that you're going to stand before Allah and ask about him. Your boss, you can get over it. You can lie to him. Your president, your king, you can get beyond that. You can pass that point. But Allah the Almighty. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, said, Allah prohibited speaking about him without knowledge. And it's considered among the biggest of all prohibitions. Rather, Ibn al-Qayyim considered it among the worst sins. Ibn al-Qayyim, حرم الله سبحانه وتعالى القول عليه بغير علم في الفتية والقضاء وجعله من أعظم المحرمات بل جعله في المرتبة العليا منها. قال الله تعالى قل إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير الحق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. He gave levels. Ibn al-Qayyim said Allah gave levels in sins. He put levels in this verse in 4 sins. He started off with the fawahish, sins, the major sins like adultery, fornication. Then he went to oppression. That's the second level. Then he went to shirk. That's the third. And then he went to the worst level, is speaking about Allah without knowledge. He started with the least and went to the worst. The worst is speaking about Allah without knowledge. ولا تقولوا لما تصف ألسنتكم الكذب هذا حلال وهذا حرام لتفتروا على الله الكذب إن الذين يفترون على الله الكذب لا يفلحون. Atiq ibn Yaqub and Ibn Wahab said, they heard Imam Malik rahimahullah said, the Salaf and those before him never used to say haram and halal. They used to say we dislike this and we like that. You should do this and you shouldn't do that. They wouldn't use the term haram and halal. Because of the verse, قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُم مَّا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُم مِّن رِزْقٍ فَجَعَلْتُم مِّنْهُ حَرَامًا وَحَلَالًا قُلْ اللَّهُ أَذِنَ لَكُمْ أَمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَفْتَرُونَ. This is why many of the ignorant today, when they go and learn from the books, and I told you that is not the proper way of learning in itself, by itself, unless one has no teacher. They go and read matters that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal disliked that. When in reality that matter is considered by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal haram. But they wouldn't use the term haram. Some of the ulama wouldn't use the haram. This brought a lot of confusion to a lot of the students. Because they wouldn't use haram and halal, fear in Allah. They say, I dislike this and I like this. I prefer this and I don't prefer that. Then Imam Malik brought many examples where the Salaf used to use makruh, I dislike and I like and I prefer and I don't prefer, of the Salaf, of the previous Imams. And he said this was a common trend used by them. Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu said, عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا ينزع العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من صدور الناس ولكن ينزع العلم بقبض العلماء حتى إذا لم يبق عالم اتخذ الناس رؤوسا جهالا فسئلوا فأفتوا بغير علم فضلوا وأضلوا. البخاري and Muslim, verily Allah does not take away knowledge by snatching it from the hearts. He takes away knowledge by taking away the scholars, by their death. So that when he leaves, the scholars leave and depart, then the people will be with the ignorant. And they will ask the ignorant about verdicts. And then those ignorant will tell them the answers. فَسُئِلُوا فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا. They are in themselves astray and they lead the masses astray. Make da'wah in what you know in confidence. And say in matters that you don't know, I don't know. Or give me time, let me ask. Let me research. Simple and easy. Yes, give da'wah. Don't stop da'wah. Don't say I'm ignorant. Give da'wah in matters that you know and back away from that which you don't know. We have to stop here. We'll stop a little bit early because we have another lecture to go to in about 45 minutes. So If you have any questions or concerns, we will take it next week, inshallah. Or, most of you can personally contact me and we'll answer it. جزاكم الله خير وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله